The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is back on. There were concerns of the deal breaking down over the weekend. Israel says Hamas militants killed 2 IDF soldiers and Israel launched strikes in Gaza. We're also hearing from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who were involved in the negotiations. They spoke to 60 Minutes about the process and what they said led to a breakthrough.
There were a couple intense moments that we had, but what led to this was really the trust that we were able to build. And I was trained in foreign policy really in President Trump's first term by seeing an outsider president come into Washington with a different school of foreign policy than had been brought in place for the 20 or 30 years prior.
CBS News senior foreign correspondent Debora Patta is following developments for us and joins us from Jerusalem this morning. Good morning, Debora. You know, the Witkoff-Kushner interview was so interesting. They effectively say a different leadership style is bringing results no other administration could deliver. But based on what we just saw this past weekend, this ceasefire could become undone any moment. Update us on what's happening.
Well, according to President Trump, it is still holding. And today the skies over Gaza were quiet this morning. But you're quite right. Make no mistake, Errol, this was the gravest threat yet to the 10-day-old ceasefire. For Palestinians in Gaza, who've really barely had time to begin imagining a future with no war. It was a bloody weekend, over 45 killed, nearly 100 injured. The devastating aftermath scenes that they thought really were a thing of the past were all back. Hospitals were overrun with the injured once again. And 2 sites in particular underscored the brutal civilian cost of this war. An Israeli strike on a seaside cafe where families were enjoying a moment of peace, and another hit on a media center which killed a cameraman and an engineer. More than 220 media workers, as you know, have been killed in the past. We also saw 2 Israeli soldiers killed. They were killed in the fighting, and both sides are blaming each other for those violations. The IDF said Hamas fighters had crossed the agreed line in the north and attacked in the south, and Hamas said they were targeting criminal gangs in the north that were armed by Israel, and then said they had nothing to do with the attack in the south, really underscoring how much contact they'd lost with fighters on the ground and how much in disarray they really are. So the real test is to come of whether the outsiders can ensure that this holds. And as you know, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have arrived in Israel, and part of that process will be to ensure the peace process remains on track, Errol.
Yeah, and we know that aid is just barely getting into the people of Gaza. Debora, with the latest, thank you.